Okay then, so what are your experiences of domestic abuse?
Being controlled.
Emotionally and psychologically abused.
I've been a victim of financial abuse and sexual abuse and physical abuse, which left me feeling absolutely worthless.
My only experiences with domestic abuse are my parents, actually. I've never been on the receiving end of any of it, but I've grown up hearing a lot, and now I'm a bit nosy because of it and very afraid of loud noise. Like even like the slightest hostility in somebody's voice can put me on edge because of what I experienced through my parents.
So it did affect you then?
Yeah.
Because people say, oh, well, the kids were upstairs, they didn't hear anything and all that. But you can actually feel the tension in the room. So children are like sponges. So they pick up on that and they feel it. So you're in constant like fight or flight, that unpredictability, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I grew up with that because my dad was an alcoholic and my mum was a nurse. But there was still that she emotionally wasn't there. She would say to me, like when she was explaining maths or something, are you stupid? Why are you stupid? And you think, God, you've all got all this going on and you want me to be good at maths and things like that. And then my dad, he never ever spoke to me, never had a conversation, let alone a sentence. So then, because of those foundations, that's, I think, when you go into, you don't go into abusive relationships knowingly. It's because I wanted somebody stronger, somebody who could do this, somebody who could do it, and I got exactly that. And he was the most abusive out of those people. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think with the because you grow up around it, so you don't realize how toxic it is until you're experiencing it yourself. Like, I didn't think much of my first partner. He was constantly on the drink. My dad was constantly on the drink, and my dad seemed like a fine enough person. He was military. So, like, oh, it can't be that bad that, my partner's sitting here chugging 3 or 4 ciders in a row. And, yeah, it was actually pretty bad because I didn't realize that he was emotionally manipulating me because he was exactly like my father.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And people don't realise the long-lasting effect that this type of abuse has on people. I've had to go for therapy for certain things and had to work on my self-worth. I became very withdrawn, even from a child, after I was sexually abused. And in my day, children were seen and not heard. So for all I used to say to my dad, I don't want to go with this abuser, wherever he was taking me. My dad would say, well, you'll only hang around the streets, so get yourself away. So I felt, well, I was 9-year-old. You listen to your dad, Dad says I have to do it. And that stuck with me. Well, it'll never leave me.
For me, it was fine to start with, and then his mum died, and he started drinking a little bit more, and then some of his friends were involved in an accident, and some of them died, and he started drinking a little bit more, and it just got worse and worse. But he wouldn't do it in the house; he would go out and do it outside and cause problems for other people as well. And then he'd come back. Sometimes he would just fall asleep in the chair, but then other times he'd be looking for an argument. There was never any hitting or punching. It was just words, but words can hurt more than the punches.
Definitely.
Yeah.
When you feel that you're useless, and then it was my fault. I was trying to control him.
They're very good at that, aren't they?
Yeah.
The mental abuse, yeah.
Yeah.
My ex-wife was very much a narcissist. Everything had to be her way. She would tell me what time I could come in, if I ever went out. She would dictate that I had to do X, Y, and Z. If I wanted to smoke for all I was paying the rent, I had to go out on the balcony. And I know it's not PC now, but in those days, people just smoked wherever they were. And she kept me financially under the thumb. I used to have to beg her in front of her workmates for some money just to get my lunch.
I've also found, like, with the drink, because I think that's part of where, I won't say it's entirely where the abuse comes from, but it's definitely worse. The abusers are worse with the drink. Both my mom and my dad were functioning alcoholics, and like every day before, that's actually what made my parents get the divorce in the long run, was my mom started realizing she was putting tequila rose in her coffee before taking us to school. And she had snapped at me because she had ran out of tequila. And that's when she kind of put her foot down and went, I can't do this anymore. And it got a little bit better from there. I haven't seen my father in about 10 years, but some of the things that he said to me are still kind of stuck with me. And it sucks. It really sucks.
It does.
I only ever once witnessed my father being abusive towards my mother. And well, I remember as a child, but I'd be about maybe 11, and we're on holiday and they were arguing, and my dad pushed my mum and she fell over the suitcase onto the floor. And I'm going back 50 odd years, and I can see it plain as day today. Those things never leave you, I think, you know. They're always there at the back of your mind.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why there's a big push now on domestic abuse and that raising that awareness. And, you know, children, like young people, need to be aware of like the red flags in relationships. Because I used to get, well, if you don't do this, well, you don't love me then, do you? And it was a bit of, you know, that going on and things. And you think, absolutely, yeah. And I was abused by my grandfather, and my mum said to me, you can tell who you want, it's up to you. Tell your grandma, whatever. But if you tell her, it'll kill her. So how was that a choice?
Emotional abuse.
Absolutely, yes. I've had this conversation with her. And it won't have been me that said that. And I thought, it was you, because I remember it, and it was you. And then my ex-husband's father came on to me, and I was telling her, and I was like mortified by it, and I was telling her, and she said, it's because you're too nice. I thought, oh, so my fault again, right? So yeah.
Well, as far as
Oh, sorry. I just want to say, like, because of the, with what you said, like, emotional abuse is probably the worst because it always comes back to you. Yeah. It's always your fault. It's always your problem. You're always the one doing it. And I've actually found, like, I currently have a really, really nice partner and a lovely relationship, but because of the abuse that I endured emotionally from my parents and my previous partner, sometimes I'll say something to him. Like this morning, I was just joking about the weather, and I said, well, if you can't control the weather, you don't love me. And my brain immediately thought, oh God, I'm doing it. I'm a terrible person. I'm abusing him. And I've thought that like once or twice, and I've thought I'm not doing enough. I need to give more. And it's like, no, I'm fine. I'm not that kind of person. I know I'm not, but I grew up with that. Yeah. So now I'm still the one causing a problem, even though I've never caused the problem. So like, how do you get over that?
As far as the sexual abuse, in my case, it left me feeling ashamed, obviously, and guilty, because I was 40-year-old before I approached the police. And I felt guilty for the fact that if I'd gone sooner, how many kids could I have saved from this horrible monster?
Yeah.
You know, it's just, it weighs heavy, you know.
But then you've got to think that you were a child at the time.
Yes, but it still doesn't.
No.
It still doesn't stop me feeling the way I feel. You know, because I went through it. I know what he was capable of subjecting kids to.
Right.
And I feel that guilt that I didn't come forward sooner.
I think the worst thing about like sexual abuse is even if you had come forward sooner, you don't have proof. What can you do about it? Sometimes they get off scot-free with the stuff they're doing, and it's like, this is an actual predator. You need to be stopped. You need to stop it. But there's what? You're the victim, and you're not taken seriously.
He was a prolific paedophile, and I'm sure if I'd gone to the place and mentioned the different places and houses that he visited,
Yeah.
there'd be more kids to come forward and
Yeah, definitely.
you know.
But it was when you were a child, it was looked back on very differently. It was looked on very differently. Children weren't believed.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if women were believed way
Yeah.
back then. You can't prove it. It's done behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so
It's
But
still
you
like
don't
that
think
now,
if there's
isn't
more
it?
than one child, I can think of at least half a dozen that he was probably abusing at the same time as me.
but then you could say, but the other children didn't go forward either. And if they had come forward, you would have been saved.
Yeah.
Why does it have to fall on your shoulders?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Another small thing, like, what's really bad, I once had a friend who was being abused and I had no idea. She was constantly wanting to sleep over and, like, hang out with me, and, like, in the shops she'd be like, oh, hey, and, like, follow me and my mom, and I thought it was actually kind of weird. And I was like, you know, you're kind of being a creep. But then about 5-6 years later, I find out from another friend of ours that she was actually being abused by her uncle in that manner, and I had no idea. She never said anything. She was just overly friendly to me. And I think part of what it was that she was looking for an escape. She never said a word. If she had, I would have been able to help her, and I hold that guilt like I could have helped somebody in my immediate circle, and I just didn't see the signs. Because it's all behind closed doors. Can't prove anything.
But you were a child as well.
I was.
And the thing is, because of the stigma and you don't know how to tell people, I think you put a like shame,
Yeah.
a mask, you just try to be normal,
Yeah.
fit in, invisible.
Yeah, that's what she was
So,
doing, so I
yeah.
never knew.
It really shaped me into the person I became. Withdrawn. I only had one friend when I moved up to senior school. And I didn't, you know, I'd go on holiday with my parents and the rest of the family, and I would just wander off on my own. You know, it also made me feel not good enough for anything. You know,
Yeah.
well, basically, he stole my childhood.
Yeah.
And I think when it's happened that many times, you sort of lose yourself and your self-worth, your self-esteem, don't you?
Yeah.
But I think if you can look at yourself, turn things around, and you know, and sort of change the perspective that, you know, we were children and things like that, and do that work, then know your worth
Yeah.
and know that you are good enough and like yourself.